Low back problems got you down. Let's take about 4 to 6 minutes to see if we can make some change for you. So what we got going on today, oftentimes we get athletes coming in complaining of discomfort right in the region above the hip off to the lateral side of the spine. That's oftentimes associated to the QL, and so we're gonna see if we can take a couple minutes here to see if we can open up some of the lateral aspects of the hip, also corresponding to that QL region. So what we're gonna do two things. We're gonna do a little bit of mobilization and some activation, all right? So I've got an elevated surface here. I can use a box, I can use a bench, I can use a chair, you can use a stool. I got a bench for today. So what I'm gonna do is essentially I'm gonna assess myself into a side plank position. So I'm gonna go from an elevated position with my elbow on the bench, my elbow just below my shoulder, all right? From here, I'm gonna get myself into basically kind of a little bit of a side plank position with my top leg supporting overleaf, my bottom leg extended out nice, long, and strong. From here, I'm gonna pull my hips underneath me, and then I'm going to essentially see if I can reach my bottom leg out while simultaneously dropping this hip down to the floor. So if you've been dealing with any sort of SI issues of that hip and pelvis, this is gonna see if we can open that up. We're gonna do a little bit of that lateral line, that lateral sling off to the side for us. If you've been dealing with any sort of TFL issues off the lateral side, IT band syndrome, you might also feel this as well. As you're through here, you can kind of play around and just kind of manipulate and just see if you can let that fall to the floor as we're in that position. So we're gonna hold here for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes and just explore in this position. I can also incorporate a little PNF of driving that foot into the ground, get a little contraction across that lateral line for me, and then breathe out. Let myself fall a little bit deeper as I'm in that position. I know for me, my hips are oftentimes a big culprit for a lot of the low back issues I have, especially we do all day long. We sit oftentimes, we hunch oftentimes, we don't breathe very well, we're dealing with too much stress, we don't sleep, a whole slew of issues that is going to correspond and influence the hips function and also the position of the pelvis. So as we open this up, I'm just gonna see if I can continue to let that fall. Again, as you're in these positions, explore when you get into those positions. Does the hip wanna run away? Is it okay extending out? Do you feel any sort of restriction as you bend one direction from the other? Again, you guys, oftentimes we get so fixated on everything staying static and stiff that oftentimes we become that oak tree that's just stiff and rigid that can't move, and then we try to do movements that are incorporating any sort of rotation or any sort of dynamic extension or bending or flexing. Oftentimes that spine and the hips aren't used to though, because we're so static and rigid that all of a sudden, especially if we're doing anything dynamic, then we end up having a problem, okay? So we're gonna take essentially 90 seconds to 2 minutes on each side there, okay? So we're gonna open up and see if we can get a little bit more mobilization in those hips. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add on to that rotational component. That's oftentimes one of the things we see with athletes that are coming in the door is they work so much, again, of being fixated and keeping that spine static that we don't incorporate a lot of that rotational pattern. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a band, I got it fixated to a rack here. Again, you can fixate this to anything. If you got a cable, you can use that. If you got, you can get creative with this and do it essentially on the floor, but I'm gonna use a band for today, okay? I'm also gonna use a stability ball. You can use a medicine ball, you can hug a pillow, you can use something. We're just trying to see if we can, again, get that to open up a little bit. From here, I'm gonna get some tension. I'm gonna hold the band across my body. From there, I'm gonna walk out laterally, just so enough I get some restriction of the band. I'm gonna let the band kind of take me a little bit. I'm gonna resist that, and then I'm going to rotate away from that, all at the same time making sure I don't slingshot myself back in there. So I'm gonna rotate away, and then I'm going to control the eccentric back as I'm in that position. Initially on this, you guys, we want to really focus on owning that movement pattern and own the control on this, and really seeing as you go in that rotational pattern, are you able to disassociate your upper extremity from your lower extremity? Oftentimes we see athletes rotate, but the full trunk rotates, again, because we are so static and everything is taking on so much just tension because there's no movement in the differentiating from the upper to lower. So as you're in that rotational pattern, you guys, see if you can, first off, create that rotation, but other part, when you get into that, do you feel areas where you're unable to breathe? Again, what I was kind of lean on is if you can't breathe in a position, you don't own that position. We want to be able to not only mobilize and have accessibility to those positions, but also breathe so your body is getting that signal that it's okay to operate and it's okay to function in that, all right? So what we got for us today is about 3 to 4 minutes working on each side of that lateral line, that QL, 90 seconds to 2 minutes each side, and then probably 2 sets of maybe 8 to 12 to 15 repetitions depending on tension, and then also depending on your comfort level with that. We want to think quality over quantity on that, especially initially, you guys. But check that out, see if that gives a little bit of relief to your back pain. Come back for another episode.